Listen, there is nothing more accurate with that whole exchange where they're describing what's going on in the criminal courtroom. And the judge looks like he's asleep. There's a white man. He's pointing at the colored man and he's yelling. The colored man is crying. And now they're taking the colored man away. That's it right there, ladies and gentlemen. That's
your ball game. Yeah. Oh my god.
It's perfect.
Today's special combo Monday Mentors and Movie Verdicts episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search builds great teams by connecting lawyers in Texas with career opportunities at small and boutique law firms, like the law firm of Atticus Finch. Not a bad place to start. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Well, I mentioned that we decided to combine our Monday Mentors and Movie Verdicts podcast today because, well, it seemed to me that Atticus Finch is a pretty good mentor. And so who better to mentor you today than Atticus Finch? And I learned a lot watching him in these 2 hours. And if you haven't seen the movie, or it's been a long time as it was for me since you've seen it, maybe this will inspire you to go back and watch it and learn a little something about how to be a lawyer, yes, but probably most importantly, how to be a human. And for me, how to be a parent. So, all right. If you learn this single trick, Scout, you'll get along a lot better with all kinds of folks. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view. It's time for To Kill a Mockingbird.
I'm simply defending Tom Robinson. There's been some talk that I shouldn't do much about defending this man.
Then why are you doing it?
If I didn't, I couldn't hold my head up in town.
To Kill a Mockingbird, for the first time ever on Blu-ray High Def, celebrate the 50th anniversary of one of the most beloved and critically acclaimed films of all time.
You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view.
Winner of 3 Academy Awards.
Miss Jean Louise, stand up. Your father's passing.
Including Best Actor Gregory Peck as Atticus Finch, the AFI #1 hero in film history.
All men are created equal.
Now, remastered in high definition with extensive film and audio restoration.
Atticus, do you think Boo Radley ever really comes and looks in my window at night?
And loaded with unforgettable bonus features.
Hey, Boo.
Experience this true American classic like never before.
In the name of God, do your duty.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Welcome back, everybody, to Movie Verdicts.
What's up?
Robert Callahan
Baylor's
back
say it
as usual in his Baylor Law
Say
finest self.
Yeah,
And
close enough.
Oh, I'm using like all sorts of like, you know, I'm playing off of it now. Like I've got it embedded so deep I can just like riff off of it now. And of course, Daniel Hare with you as well, Varsity Search, Robert Callahan with Callahan and King Law Firm in Waco. And Robert, we are talking about a classic today. Sometimes we do some stuff for fun, sometimes some thriller stuff.
Sometimes we just want to be depressed.
Sometimes we want to be depressed and, you know, reach back to our high school English roots and, you know, get real artsy and literary. And so that's where we're headed today. And as we talk about To Kill a Mockingbird. And this is one that I a month or so ago, a little over a month ago, I did a solo episode where one of the things I talked about was how over the course of the last year and a half that we've been doing the show, not just this, but the Monday Mentors episodes, how guests have been offering up their favorite legal movies that I ask them each episode. So we've got like 60 or so of those now. To Kill a Mockingbird is fourth in the standings amongst the lawyers that have given their favorite legal movies, only behind My Cousin Vinny and Few Good Men and Legally Blonde. So there's a mix for you with To Kill a Mockingbird in there at number 4. So it's a popular one among the lawyers. It's a popular one as movies go generally, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I'm curious. I had not seen this. I think since high school, honestly. Like I think in high school, I read the book in English class, and we watched the movie. I'm fairly certain in English class. And I don't think I've gone back to it until getting ready for this podcast. So I've got some thoughts on that, but I'm curious kind of your interaction with this movie over time and kind of some of your initial thoughts.
Yeah. Man, I mean, I remember this was a book that I probably honestly didn't read in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like I hated reading in high school. And so any chance that I had to, get past it, read the, what do they call it?
Cliff
the Cliff Notes or whatever.
Oh, I should just pause it. Like, I'm not suggesting I necessarily read the whole thing cover to cover.
Oh, okay.
I just know it was assigned to us.
Cool. So this is a safe
responsible
space.
Yeah, safe
okay.
space.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're good then. All right.
It was in the syllabus is what I'm going to say.
Right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. I like that. So yeah, I mean, I probably didn't
Miss
actually
Harris.
watch it.
I love you, Miss
Statute of
Harris.
limitations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably didn't watch it until like college, and I think it was for like a film class or something like that. And just as depressing as I remember it, although visually, like cinematography, like black and white setting, things like that, just a lot of great touches.
Yeah.
The cast is great. So, but I mean, and then hopefully we'll get to talk about it too. The sequel to the book, or I shouldn't even say sequel. There's maybe the reimagining of the book, which was to, Go Set a Watchman. Which was released a few years ago, and there's a little bit of controversy, but allegedly it's like the estate of the original author released after the fact, the manuscripts, that imagined the story differently. And it feels like a sequel because it's further in time. Scout's like a teenager. She's still doing a little bit of the narrative, like history looking back, but it's the whole thing really is focused on the time of her being like a late teenager or a college student, rather than through her eyes as a young child. Yeah.
Man, it just, I was trying to think. So over the course of watching it, the first time, and then I'm meaning like recently within the last couple of weeks, watching it, starting to kind of jot down some stuff, and then watching it a second time to kind of go through and get some stuff I missed the first time. In the midst of that, we also had the Chauvin trial. So like as I'm kind of processing through this movie, just the relevance, it seems, of it when you kind of combine, the racial issues in the country with then criminal justice as, you could say criminal justice is its own issue, but then of course the two intersect quite a bit. It just feels familiar. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It just feels timely and familiar, even though it's made in 1962 and set in 1932.
Yeah, I think that we talked about this with maybe the last movie that we did, or one of the last movies that we did, but it feels evergreen. There's just some topics like, when we were talking about Runaway Jury, it was gun control. It's
Right.
always sort of a thing. It's always present and relevant. And in the same way, like these racially charged trials and the implication of race in the justice systems, always evergreen. And yeah, I mean, man, we are in the year of our Lord 2021 on this, the 26th day of Abril, and we are still talking about these same topics and issues when it comes to justice today, a la the Chauvin trial. We're going to start the Ahmaud Arbery trials pretty soon. Just timeless.
Yeah. And you're right. Thinking about, when you mentioned the gun control one with Runaway Jury, then I was also, and I thought about this when I think I watched through the first time, but, the underlying, facts that lead to the trial in this is almost similar in some ways to the trial that underlied the Marshall story, because you had kind of the white. I mean, it was a little different situation, but you kind of had this idea of the black man being charged with the sexual crime of a white woman, where it's the white woman who is actually the one initiating. And then there was shame around that needed to be covered up. I mean, that's essentially what was happening underlying the Marshall movie and story that we did last year. And so you're right. Like, it just continues. Some of these things just continue to reflect on one another. Yeah. I mean, what for you? What themes stood out that were important to you or powerful for you, or what did you see that jumped out theme wise?
Yeah, the concept of first do no harm, this sort of the protecting the innocence of the innocent, or championing the cause of the innocent. Mm-hmm. And I don't completely know how to wrap it in a bow and give it a good synopsis, but the conversation that Atticus is having early on with Jim and Scout about how he used to hunt, but it's you don't hunt a mockingbird because a mockingbird doesn't do any harm. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot more to unpack there than I think that the movie goes into. And honestly, I don't remember about the book, how much it goes into it, but what it immediately reminds me of is The Color Purple. And there's a great line in The Color Purple, where one of the characters says she thinks it pisses God off to walk by the color purple and not notice it. Just like to appreciate the beauty of creation, and kind of in the same way, here's this, this innocent creature. We're talking on surface level about the mockingbird that does no harm to society, and why would we hunt it? And on the deeper level, we know that's really a commentary on Tom Robinson. But, and I don't want to get too far into it, it still doesn't quite, at least in the movie, it doesn't quite answer the question of why did Atticus take on the noble role of defending him. I want to know more about what that concept of innocence, or the parallel of the mockingbird does for his sensibility and his morals.
That's such a good point. In fact, and I've got a few notes that I will get to in a little bit about some of the differences between the novel and the movie, and obviously they're just different mediums. There's different time constraints in a movie that you just can't dive into enough stuff as you can in the novel format. But for the most part, as I understand those that have really kind of dissected both, there's not a ton of differences. I mean, a lot of it tracks. It's just, some of it's some character development stuff. Some actual minor characters have to kind of be reduced or cut out. But what you raised, I think, is really interesting, which is, and it seems like it'd be good fodder for a prequel almost of sorts, is to kind of how Atticus came to be, what was like 20-year-old Atticus like and 30-year-old Atticus like, or what happened? And maybe that's explored, and I should know this, but I don't. Maybe that's explored at least somewhat in the novel, or kind of talked through. But I think that it does like give you kind of that curiosity as to why he's at that place in his life when he answers the call when the judge comes to his house that night. Absolutely. And he doesn't really, he doesn't sleep on it. He doesn't say, give me, he's got the answer. I mean, he pauses maybe for a half second, probably thinking through what it's going to mean for him and his family, but
I'll take the case.
I mean, his answer is pretty quick and firm. In fact, I'll preview it. It may be one of my favorite lines in the movie. We'll get to it in a little bit. A theme for me that kind of came out. I've got several, but I'm going to start with this one. I'm looking here trying to decide which one to start with. The power of children. I think really hit me hard in this movie. And to the point of when you see Scout initiate at the very beginning of the movie with Mr. Cunningham bringing over the crops, the greens that he's paying Atticus with, and just the kindness that she exudes him, and then later the scene at the jailhouse where basically she comes there and is able to talk to Mr. Cunningham and kind of break through to him and basically diffuses that situation at the jail out of her kindness and her heart. And then, you also see it with her and Jim with the, I'll forget his name, the boy at the school, where there's the fight that happens. And then like 2 seconds later, they're best friends and inviting him to dinner. It's Cunningham's kid. It's Cunningham's kid. And then, but also, seeing how, and it's just brief. They don't show it a lot, so you kind of have to extrapolate this out. But like, even the just sort of facial expressions and interactions that are nonverbal, I would say, even between Jim, I think more so than Scout, and Tom's kids too. Like, there's just like a, we're all kids. We're just human kids. And and just like I just more and through the whole movie to at the end at the trial when the kids are up there with the black reverend and kind of just leaning on his chest and talking to just the power of children and the innocence of children. You mentioned innocence earlier. I think that's a key point. And then it just also kind of grieved me about how the behaviors of the adults are learned. They're taught, they're developed, they're not existing there in the children at 9 years old and at 7 years old. And it's just sad, right? Yeah.
Yep, so true. And on that point is one of the early thoughts that I observed was when Cunningham Sr. comes to drop off the greens or whatever it is that he's trading in trade. Scout has a conversation with Atticus and says, "Dad, are we poor?" Like just that moment that, like, I mean, you don't know when you're a kid, especially not if you're happy. If you have a good happy background, and that moment where you realize your place in the societal pecking order, where the world gets a little bigger. And the same thing is kind of true, man. And I'm really trying not to go off on a tangent or take us off too far, but like there's something to be said too about like, that first time you learn where you are in society, from a demographic, racially or socioeconomically. You'll hear a lot of celebrities talk about the first time that they realized that they were Black and what that, felt like. And, I could tell you about, my first experience where I realized I'm different or we're somehow different. But anyway, just the innocence of the children, like maybe part of it is just that I feel like these actors and actresses, they play it so well. But it really does. I don't even know if it's intentional. It's just so subtly, beautifully tragic.
Yeah.
It just really stark contrast in between the adults and the children.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny too, kind of on you see in other movies made after this, and probably before it too, I don't know. I mean, we're talking about a movie made in the 60s, but early 60s, that you see this tool used by directors and writers in film of using kids to soften the adults, and to cut through and to be the ones that reconcile adults maybe to each other or to this, just or rescue them kind of from whatever destruction they're going through in their lives. And it's just really done well in this movie, and it's hard to ignore. One of the other ones, is you've talked about this before, in I think some different contexts, but it referenced back to Atticus, and the power and the importance of whether you call it the few or the one, to stand up. It doesn't necessarily. I mean, you'd love to have a ton of people stand up and do what's right, but you don't have to have a ton of people to stand up and do what's right in order to make big impact and change and turn things in a new direction. And, just seeing Atticus and his role do that here, I think is a good example of that.
Yeah. It would be really easy for this to have been a movie about the court case and about the triumph of, a time to kill, Matthew McConaughey. You change a couple of things and this is a time to kill. And the verdict comes out the right way despite all odds and all normal societal expectations. But it's not. Instead, it is a story about doing the right thing for the right reasons, and even when it doesn't turn out the way that it should. Yeah. And that is an important story. It's an important lesson in life. There's beauty to the way that they depict that nobility and just the community, the Black community standing to their feet in appreciation for what he's done, while at the same time things didn't come out the way that they were supposed to. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, in fact, I made a note. I think when the jailhouse scene that I referenced earlier, where the mob is going to down there to try to kill Tom Robinson, and Atticus is down there to protect him, and Scout shows up, and they start. I was trying to look and see here. They start talking. It was like a property law concept. What was it?
Entailment.
The entailments. They start talking about entailments, and really, and that's probably at least halfway through the movie, if not more. And that's the first kind of legal dialogue we even have. I mean, and I'm like 3/4 down on my note page where I wrote that. So you're right. Like, and then the trial is a relatively short scene, and again, like it may have been, I think it was probably a little bit lengthier percentage wise in the novel, but then there's a fairly healthy chunk of movie that occurs after the trial is over, and so you're right, like it's really it's not a movie about a court case. It's not a trial movie. It is about so many other things, and kind of related to the comments earlier about the children. I mean, I felt the weight of it as much as anything as a parenting movie. I mean, just back to the behavior from the kids is learned. It's not ingrained in them. And so the responsibility that I have in parenting my kids, watching Atticus, I mean, one of his responses to why he's representing is because he wanted to be able to, have authority over the kids, and he couldn't do it if he, I mean, there's all these things about parenting that are there, especially as a single dad, and trying to do that. He's not the best parent. The kids are running around in the middle of the night with weird people all over the place. And there's some slip ups on the parenting from Atticus.
Bygone different times, like especially when you in a small community where, like there's only 5 people that live there anyway, like the kids can, go in and out at all different types of night and get slack. Can you imagine today, like the way that we rode our bikes around the neighborhood until the sun, till sunset, and no cell phone, no tracker, no pager, no device by which our parents could find our whereabouts. Like I can't imagine that today. At age 10, we just had our run of the city on our bikes wherever, until our feet got tired of pedaling. Different story for a different time. But I caught that aspect of like him saying, if I didn't do this, I wouldn't have the authority to tell my kids to, I can't remember how he said it, right for wrong. I couldn't tell you or Jim not to do something is the line that he used. Yeah. And I'm assuming that he meant moral authority. Like I'd come from a place of being a hypocrite if I didn't do the right thing, but I'm asking you to do the right thing when it's hard. But yeah, when they're talking like the power of children, there's the point where the kids are watching the hearing, the grand jury hearing, and they're describing, what's going on in there. I don't want to, I want to do a deep dive on this, here in a little bit, but just the innocence by which they're explaining everything. Like there's there's the color man here, and now the color man's crying, and they're taking the color man away, and that kind of thing. And when Jim comes home, I think, and maybe it was when they got done at Tom Robinson's house with the relatives. I think that's when it was. There's a point where Atticus says, I wanted to tell you, or there's things that I can't tell you yet about this world, or there's things that I wish I could protect you from in this world. But
that's a great
just
line.
that realization that like the loss of innocence, I guess is really what it is. And when you have children that are so beautifully innocent that are demonstrated, you really feel that, especially as a parent going back and watching the whole thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing I was going to mention, when you were talking about the kind of discovering where you are in the, either in the hierarchy of society or whatever, whether it's on race or economics or whatever, that conversation between Atticus and Scout, where she's asking about whether they're poor and we're poor and all this, and it's interesting, right? Like Atticus says, he's poor and we're poor too. So like it's funny, I mean, in that era, Depression era, and there's not anything hardly to go around. Everyone feels poor, but yet there's still this distinction between the Bob Ewells of the world that are kind of the other, poor out in the, country sticks versus the lawyer poor who we're in the city, we're just trying to get by. It's tough times. And, that there's still that distinction. But you're right about the kids kind of starting to figure it out, like where they fall and different things like that.
And there were just these little striations early on that they kind of developed. I mean, you've got Dill that's coming to his aunt's for a couple of weeks in the summer.
Right.
And, he's telling Jim and Scout that he doesn't have a dad. And then Calpurnia comes out, and then all of a sudden his dad's a pilot. And it's almost like he needed to elevate himself above the colored help. Then there's Boo Radley, and everyone realized that, he's at the bottom of the social caste. There's the Miss, Sabiste, I think I cannot remember her name. Dubose, I think is the,
yes, Mr. Dubose,
the crazy, Confederate lady
on the porch.
Yeah. And she's above Boo Radley and above, Mr. Radley Sr.
Yeah.
But still, she's probably above Calpurnia.
Right. You kind of got Maudie, who's on kind of Atticus level.
Yep.
Right.
And then the judge, the top rung is the judge, Colonel Sanders, who comes in the middle of the night and just expects to be able to talk to you. And tell me he didn't look like Colonel Sanders walking up in a white suit, black bow tie. Ridiculous. I thought he was going to start selling me an 8-piece of chicken or something like.
Hey, I was wondering why Atticus wasn't standing on his feet when the judge walked up. So, he just sits there. Hey, Judge.
Yeah. Yeah.
The sheriff, you got the sheriff too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
no,
and
right.
then of course we've got the black family we see the black community in the balcony at the trial, and we see them at the one house gathered together, all the relatives and the friends. And it didn't really depict it completely, but you could just, it felt like, a house back in the sticks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Almost like no electricity, this is poor. These are poor people, that are, below the people that are in the city.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, no, I kind of had in my head just the way it was laid out is, because, when Atticus would have to go out to the Robinson home, it was like, I'm going to be gone for a while. Like, it's going to take me a while to get out there. Right. Mm-hmm. So you're right. And so, but similarly, I think like the Ewell types, the poor farmer and the Cunningham types likewise were out in the sticks somewhere. And maybe they weren't quite as far out as the, Robinson home, because, when Robinson would come home, he would have to go across or through like the Ewell or around kind of the Ewell property. So there's maybe from the city out. So maybe maybe you kind of have that as like the intermediate ring is the Ewell crew, and then the Robinson crew is kind of on the outer ring or something. But yeah, you got that sense of geographically where people were laid out, from Atticus and Maudie being in the town, and DuBose and all that in the town, and kind of the rings out of town, for sure.
And since you asked me about my favorite commentary on those different things, you didn't ask me yet, but I know that you really wanted to.
That's right.
There's a great series that PBS did a few years ago. It's called Race: The Power of an Illusion. It's a documentary. It's a couple of different episodes long, but what it eventually comes to is, when we in America did the whole African transatlantic slave trade, the way we had to have a reason to justify the subjugation of human beings as property. And the way that we did that was by dehumanizing them and saying that, they were sub-intelligent, subhuman, those kinds of things. Well, then eventually society says, oh no, these are real people. We have to treat them equally. And what stayed was that broken perception of race. And so that's why it's so persistent and hard to get rid of, is because there's just generations of this superiority and inferiority that's sewn into our DNA. And so the concept of, you can have two families, both that are in the sticks, both that are equally poor, both that have no resources, no means, no education, whatever have you. And the white family can still feel like, well, at least I'm better off than them. I've got something that they don't.
Right.
And so, really hard thing to get rid of.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And man, it's just, there are so many things going on, in this movie. And I still we've got more to touch on, and we definitely can as we go through, and talk about some more, facts and figures, and then some categories and awards here on this one. We've talked about this was released in 1962, Christmas Day, 1962, actually. And I did want to provide some context around what was going on. So I just grabbed a few things from 1962 that stood out. In January of that year, the NAACP executive secretary praises President Kennedy for his role in advancing civil rights. There's a Supreme Court case, Engel versus Vitale, which eliminated or made unconstitutional mandatory prayer in public schools. In September, Sonny Liston knocks out Floyd Patterson in 2 minutes in Comiskey Park in Chicago to win the world title in boxing. James Meredith is the first black student at the University of Mississippi, is escorted in with federal marshals. That's in October of that year. Johnny Carson takes over The Tonight Show to start his run. And then October and November is the Cuban Missile Crisis. So it's a fairly packed year of stuff. And then here comes this movie here in Christmas of 1962. We've talked about, I don't know if we've mentioned his name, but Gregory Peck plays Atticus Finch, probably an all-time role. Mary Badham plays Scout. Philip Alford is Jem. I say Jim because it's Jem as you see it in the book and in the thing, Jim. John Magna plays Dill. Brock Peters, Tom Robinson, Estelle Evans, Calpurnia, Rosemary Murphy, Maudie, and Robert Duvall. And this is his first credit as an actor here in a movie in this, where he doesn't have a line, but he's ever present.
Yeah, he's always with us.
He's always with us in this movie as Boo Radley. And obviously, he and Gregory Peck, the most famous of those that came out of this, it would appear. But, and then we talked about Harper Lee writing the novel, that, was adapted to screen. And, quickly, IMDb, it's 8.2, very high, Rotten Tomatoes, a pair of 92s. So well liked by critics and audience. Best lawyer movies on IMDb, number 1. On that list, number 16 on the ABA list. It made $13 million on a $2 million budget, which I kind of did some quick math, and that would be about $113 million on like a $17 million budget. So pretty good box office, I would say. Last part here, we can talk about any of this stuff. Just quickly, since we just had the Oscars this weekend, this was nominated for a bunch of them. Gregory Peck did win for Best Actor. The screenplay won. The art direction, you mentioned the black and white. Back in this era, they were still giving awards for black and white and then for color movies in different categories. So this won in Best Art Direction for black and white. And it did not win Best Picture. Lawrence of Arabia won Best Picture that year. Mary Badham was 9 years old, and she was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actress. Did not win. Also, director, cinematography, music, all of that was nominated. And there was quite a bit made about the music, because the music in it is sort of, it was described a few different places, and I think this is right. It's kind of childlike, elementary, whimsical in some ways, but it sort of goes along with, as the novel is narrated by Scout, it's kind of hard to do first-person narration novel to screen, but one of the ways they tried to translate it was through the type of music that they used throughout. But anyway, you talked earlier about how well acted the movie is. What stands out to you about any of the production or the actors, actresses, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm really curious about the set situation, because
yeah, I've got a little on that. Yeah.
It's not an expansive set, but you definitely feel like you are in a town. That block of houses, between, the Finch house and, the Radley's house. And I mean, you feel like that's real. particularly when they're sneaking around in the Radleys' yard and chicken wire fencing and all that. And I mean, it just felt really tangible, just really concrete. It didn't feel like they were on a set. I think
they were. So they spent about $250,000 to build that block of houses and everything else. So on the set of the movie studio, pretty impressive. Yeah.
And then Scout and Jim's acting, you know, I feel like they're just kind of going, you know, like swing for swing, you know, she felt like at the beginning of the movie, Jim seemed like this impetuous, you know, kid, like complaining because his dad, I guess he didn't think enough of his dad because he didn't play for the Methodists. He didn't play football for the Methodists. But, you know, and Scout seemed like the center of attention and the one that was really carrying the movie. But, you know, you really see the weight of injustice on Jim's face as he's realizing what it means to be white, what it means to be in a society where blacks are marginalized, what it means to be, you know, have less than, to be treated differently. You know, one of my favorite scenes is where Jim is in the car waiting on Atticus to come back out. He's at the Robinsons' house, and the black boy that looks like he's about the same age as Jim just kind of silently walks up to the car and kind of waves, and they're sort of looking at each other, and there's this unspoken kind of understanding from both of them, like, hey, you're like me and I'm like 100%. You, and
100%. That's exactly right. I mean, we talked about this earlier. One of the things that stood out was, I mean, right away was how Scout referred to her dad as Atticus. Like, and you would think in like a old time Southern family that would not be the typical way you would address it. Actually, I looked it up because I was curious what commentary was on that. And there were some different theories that I saw. One was that Atticus intentionally wanted to create a more like open dialogue, communicative environment with his kids, and so wanted to have more of a peer-to-peer kind of relationship with the mom being gone or whatever. The other being just like that because the mom was gone and the dad, Atticus, was always working and trying cases or whatever, that he didn't really teach them the social norms of how you should address your dad. And so just let it go and it just became a thing. So I'm not sure what the answer is, but it certainly stands out. It makes you think like, wait, is this her real dad? Is this a stepfather? Like that kind of thing. And those are kind of some of the questions that come up, but they both do that. And then, Jim, we didn't talk about that earlier, but that's a good point. The sort of the evolution of Jim's and Scout's respect for their father, from where they think he's kind of just a, you know, I'll get an old guy that won't play football with them, to wait, dad can shoot. He shoots that dog out of the street, like, nobody else wants to shoot it, and so he does. And the sheriff talks him up as like the best shot in the city, in the county or whatever. And just sort of dad grows in stature, I feel like, over time, with some of those things that they start to realize, the attributes that the dad has. And then Maudie has that line about, you know, how some men are just put on this earth to do hard things or to do big things or hard jobs or something like that. And your dad's one of them. And just there's these things that kind of build him up in front of them over the course of the movie, from kind of where you first see them as like, dad's kind of lame. At the beginning of the movie. You know. All right. I'm sure we'll hit some more high level stuff as we go through this, but we kind of said there's not just in the movie, there's not just a ton of lawyering that happens. So as we give our best lawyering award here, I think we're kind of limited in our choices, but What stood out to you in terms of some of the best lawyering moments?
Yeah, it has to be either Atticus or the prosecutor, right? And I don't even know if the prosecutor gets a name in the movie.
Yeah, the state.
Yeah,
the county or whatever.
But
we're going to talk about him in a minute, by the way. I'm not letting the prosecutor off the hook today. So
hey, fair enough. Never. Yeah, my favorite moment is where where Atticus is crossing Mayella, LMA.
Yeah.
Mayella, and he throws the glass at Tom and has him catch it.
Yep.
And, he catches it with his right hand. And then, can you catch it with your left hand? Now, the difficulty about that moment is, as a lawyer being hyper technical, rules of procedure as they are today, it's essentially he's getting testimony from Tom Robinson without him being on the witness stand.
Right.
But it is one of those My Cousin Vinny moments where, he's in the back of the courtroom. How many hands am I holding, or how many fingers am I holding up now? Now the witness, and only the witness, judge, please tell us how many fingers I have, holding up. So it's a good, demonstrative exhibit kind of moment in the courtroom. Right. So I think that's my favorite.
Yeah, I was kind of waiting for him to say, all right, now catch it with your left, and then have the glass crash down behind him on the wall, wait, why didn't you catch it? I had that as well. He gets, when he has Yule on the stand, I think he does smartly get him to agree with everything that the sheriff describes about the injuries to Mayella. Including the location of the wounds, most importantly, where they are on her face. Yeah. So that, and he gets him, to say, I agree with everything that sheriff said,
Now, Mr. Ewell, you've heard the sheriff's testimony. Do you agree with his description of Mayella's injuries?
I agree with everything Mr. Tate said.
Which lines up exactly with what Atticus wants to present, which is that they had to have been made by a left-handed person. And then obviously asking him to write down his name with which he writes with his left hand. And I thought about that. I was like, oh, should he have presented that to the jury? It's like, no, even left-handed, it probably still isn't going to look real good. So probably best not to show that to the jury. We didn't have any. I don't think we had one objection in the trial, which makes me a little skeptical of the appeals chances. But so we had an appeal we were working on, which could have been pre-trial stuff and a lot of other things. But anyway, and then the other one was, it's almost like inaudible. I didn't catch it the first time, only the second time. Which is when Atticus goes to the Robinson house in the middle of the trial, before the trial starts. He's walking in the door, and you just barely hear him say to her, "We were able to get the trial postponed."
Yeah,
and to let things cool down, and that's so smart. that whole let the trial happen later, and also to move Tom out of the county into another county. To protect him, all that stuff I thought was really good. And when he had Mayella on the stand, you were talking about this. He was able to walk that line. It's always tricky, but he was able to kind of the way he was kind of setting up his defense was, not that she wasn't attacked, so he wasn't having to try to discredit her on the validity of the attack. He's basically trying to say there was an attack, and let's agree, you were beaten, you were all that. It was more just shifting the blame from one person to another, from the defendant to the dad, which I thought worked well, because you were able to kind of not be seen as a bully lawyer on the victim of the crime, essentially. But I don't know. I think I kind of like getting getting the trial postponed and getting Tom safe for a little while is probably my favorite or best.
It's a good piece of lawyering.
All right. The Aaron Brockovich Award for our prep work and investigative work, non-lawyer work. What do we think? I can go first on this one if you want.
Yeah, why don't you?
So this is arguably this goes in another category, which we'll get to, but I think I've got to go with the sheriff sort of crafting the end crime scene. It was Bob Ewell fell on his own knife. That seems about right. No, Jim, no one else was involved. He just fell on his own knife. Yeah, I'm going with that. I'll get to the ethical problems with that in a little bit, but for now, I'm gonna say maybe that. I realized I had another one, but it actually is technically it's the lawyer, so I'll save it because it's a judge moment.
I was thinking about the trial improper leading up to the trial of Tom Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really. I mean, we didn't have an investigator.
No, we had the sheriff, who was kind of the investigator stand-in.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Yeah, I like Bob Ewell killing himself, falling on the sheriff. I like that. Let's go with that.
Okay, cool. All right, best judge moment. You mentioned his Colonel Sanders entrance into the movie. We like that.
Yeah, that probably is the best moment that he has in the movie, because otherwise he is just useless, worthless on so many different levels. I love the moment where Jim has got Dill on his shoulders, or maybe a scout has Dill on his shoulders, and they're describing what's going on in the grand jury proceedings, and it's the judge is asleep, or the judge looks like he's asleep, and he doesn't that's great. He doesn't really preside over listen, there is nothing more accurate with that whole exchange where they're describing what's going on in the criminal courtroom, and the judge looks like he's asleep. There's a white man, he's pointing at the colored man and he's yelling. The colored man is crying, and now they're taking the colored man away. That's it right there, ladies and gentlemen. That is the justice
ball
system.
Game. Yeah. Oh my
it's
gosh.
Perfect.
Jim just lays it out. Oh, perfectly. No, that's good. That's tough to beat. I think the other one that stood out to me is back to the Atticus getting Ewell to write, with his left hand, but no one ever says anything. I forget how it leads up to it, but then I think Ewell says, "What difference does it make?" And the judge says, "You're left-handed, Mr. Ewell."
Yeah. True. I forgot about that.
Objection, Judge. I don't think you should have said that one. Where's the prosecutor on that? That's first shot at the prosecutor right there. A couple more coming. No, I like the asleep judge. That's good. I think that might be the best one. And that's our Chamberlain Haller Award, of course. And then Colonel Jessup Award for the best witness moment.
Best witness moment. I mean, all of Tom Robinson's testimony was it was wonderful. You could see the sincerity in his testimony and his emotion, and just the way that he was crying, just realizing, he just felt the weight of my life is on the line here and I don't have a reason to lie. So, his testimony has to be.
What happened after that?
I got down off the chair and I turned around. She sort of jumped on me. She hugged me around the waist She reached up and kissed me on the face.
There was, I read about that scene that in rehearsal and in preparation for that scene, he does not cry in rehearsal, and hadn't planned on it. When they roll the tape and they start going, he's crying, and it's like, it's the first time that's happened. And Gregory Peck talked about how he had to look past Tom to like something like a mark on the wall behind or on the bench behind, because otherwise he was going to choke up and not be able to get through what he was having to say in that scene. Mm-hmm. So you're right. Like, that was super powerful. Just that whole, that whole testimony. Absolutely right.
I would actually say that of all the movies that we've reviewed up to this point, that is the best witness sincerity moment.
Yeah. No question. I did also have to note, Yule hopping off the stand after the prosecutors finished with him without being dismissed and bumping shoulders with Atticus. And it reminded me of A Few Good Men. Like, I haven't finished my examination.
That's right.
Take your seat, Colonel.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, that's a good one. All right. Our brief recess here. Bechdel tests. I have low expectations for our tests these days. We'll run our Bechdel tests.
Surely. It's 2021. We can get
not in this movie. It's not. So, two women.
Yeah, so
talking.
Bechdel test is two women talking to each other about anything that's just not a man.
Let's talk about the sky. Let's talk about the coffee. Let's talk about something. All right.
Okay, I've got an implicit entrance.
Okay.
It's when Walter Cunningham Jr. is at the house and he's got syrup all over his dinner, which, like, why are you judging me? Like, that's a good dinner, okay? And
absolutely. It's a little Buddy the Elfish, but yes, it's a good dinner.
And so Scout says something, she remarks about how he's eating like an animal or whatever. He's putting syrup all over his dinner. And Calpurnia says, "Get in here." And she dresses her down in the next room. Now, technically they're talking, and we don't hear all the conversation, or we don't hear it, but I think that they're talking, really about Cunningham's mannerisms, and so it's really about him. But I think on a deeper level, you could say that they're really talking about manners.
I agree. I agree. I had that one because I think that's right. I do think that the conversation in the moment is about etiquette and manners.
Yeah.
It happens to be about a boy, but I think that's incidental. I actually do think that it's about that. And yeah, I just had this, I couldn't watch it without thinking about Will Ferrell pouring syrup on his spaghetti in Elf.
Can you pass the maple syrup, please?
I didn't put... It's spaghetti.
You know what? I think I have some. Yes.
You like sugar, huh?
Is there sugar in syrup?
Yes.
Then yes! We elves try to stick to the four main food groups: candy, candy canes, candy corns, and syrup.
Where's the syrup?
Right?
It's spaghetti. And so, yeah, that was a little moment of levity for me watching this, was that. But, so Calpurnia was in two of my possible options for this. That one, and then just when she was getting Scout up for school and getting her ready, and she was kind of still sleeping and kind of dragging into the house, and there was some Calpurnia there. Technically, Calpurnia and Maudie say good morning to one another.
That's where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. That knocking sound you hear is the bottom of the barrel. We're scraping.
It might technically be the only one that actually qualifies, though. if you really break it down. But no, yeah. So those are. I mean, we got a few things happening there. What about the Callagher test?
Okay, Callagher test. All right. So for review, all we need is two minorities talking to each other about anything other than a white person. Is that fair?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And we're usually pretty generous about what qualifies for minority, I would say.
That's right. So
it's like college scholarships. Like, just have some percentage. We'll be pretty lenient with it, but it's just,
I don't even know that we have two minorities talking to each other.
I mean, you can't see it on my paper right here, but I have NA. I had nothing.
Man, give me anything. I mean, there's all this family hanging outside of Tom Robinson's house. They can't,
I went through the script on that little. I did. I pulled the script up. I was going through. I was looking to try to see.
Digging into the original manuscript.
Does Helen talk to Spence? I was trying to find something.
The director's notes. Is there a moment where he thought about having them talk about the weather?
You know what would be interesting? I wonder if in the novel we get it.
Yeah.
There's a lot more room for conversation in the novel, and I wonder if we might get it in the novel. I don't know.
Okay, jury, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, listeners, if you know of a moment in the novel, any moment in the novel whatsoever, they're talking about anything, trash, air, weather, dinner, anything, please let us know.
We want to know. All right, just a couple of things that don't quite fit into categories before we hop in and finish our awards. I was it strange? Maybe I don't know. Maybe just not understanding the time and that type of living, I guess. But I thought it was strange how they all freaked out. The whole town freaked out when there was a shotgun blast. And then they all settled down as soon as they realized that they were shooting at a prowler.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why does that make it? Like, isn't that the one scenario you probably, or one of them that you're like not super excited about? Like,
right.
Maybe the word prowler means something a little more benign than I understood it, but like if it was like a fox or something, like that would be like the sort of, oh, okay, it was a fox and he got it. Like a prowler's like a dude, right?
That's a person, right?
It was like that's creeping.
That's right around my window in my house.
But everyone's just like, oh, it's just a prowler. It's all right.
Okay,
it's all right.
We're good.
Whatever. That was kind of weird. We already talked about entailments. But what seemed to be keeping the Cunninghams from being able to kind of liquidate the property because it's tied up in the way that it's allowed to be passed down. Mm-hmm. So we got a little property 101 lesson there that I didn't remember from property law, honestly. Sorry, Professor Fuselier. I don't know if we did that or not.
I'm going to pretend that I did.
All right. Do we have any juror moments that you?
I think decidedly not. I mean,
other than we had the 12 white dudes,
right? Them rendering the verdict. I mean, there were two.
He does
moments,
render the verdict.
Yeah. There were two moments that it was so stark and clear, just like what was going on in this time in this legal proceeding. One was when Mayella is on the witness stand. She is the only woman on the first floor of that courthouse. It's just like 12 men, white men over here, the judge, the prosecutor. I mean, there are no other women around in camera shot when they're looking overhead. And then, the moment where Tom Robinson's on the stand and it's, just a galley full of white men and then the one black man, against the white background. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting how they had the setup of the witness in front of the judge, where the judge really couldn't see the witness, or kind of was looking at the back of their head there.
Yeah,
that was interesting. I hadn't noticed that before in other states, but I do think I mentioned they built the set out for the town, but I think they were using an actual courthouse for the trial scenes. In fact, I'll have to go check my notes on this and maybe edit this out if this is wrong. But I think that they were using Harper Lee's hometown courthouse to film the courtroom scene.
I think I remember hearing that now that you said that.
So, best client moment.
I feel like it was when Tom Robinson stood up to catch the glass. I mean, his testimony was all powerful. But there was just like a simplicity and an innocence to, I can't raise my left hand because I tore it up in an accident.
Yeah. I was thinking about this, and I think the one that stood out to me was when we talked about the scene a couple of times at the jail where the mob is there trying to take him out, and Atticus is there kind of standing in their way. And once Scout and Jim come and they wind up dispersing the crowd, you haven't seen Tom yet, I don't think, or heard him, but you hear Tom say out the window, which is a second floor above where Atticus is, says, "Are they gone?" or something like that. And Atticus says, "They're gone. You'll be fine. They're not, whatever." It's kind of putting him at ease. Mm-hmm. And just that moment between lawyer and client, through the wall, through the barred windows, what could have been a really bad situation 10 minutes earlier is diffused. And just thinking about that moment for Tom, like, I mean, at that moment, he was minutes away from dying in the hands of a mob. And he's kind of given a reprieve for however long. I don't know. That moment was hard, but I thought a good one for a lawyer-client moment. Favorite scene? Best scene?
The one that comes to mind right now is seeing Atticus in that rocking chair in front of the courthouse steps, and he's got that lamp that he's brought from home sitting in the light. And he doesn't, as far as we know, he doesn't have a gun on his lap. No. He doesn't know that, he's going to be able to reason or rationalize his way out of it. But whatever it is that he feels like he's armed with, he is sitting on those steps and just nonchalantly, as easily as reading a newspaper, he's just waiting for it to come because it's the right thing to do. And, man, I love the moment where the mob comes up and they say, "Is he in there?" And, Atticus says something to the effect of, "Well, he's asleep right now." Not only are you not going to kill him, you're not going to bother him. Yeah. It just speaks so highly of his character.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure going into this conversation today that we were going to wind up talking about the jail scene there, like multiple times, but it does. So, I mean, I'm glad we have, because it just is like, it really is sort of you kind of have these 2 or 3 moments where, and we'll talk about it in a second, where Atticus, tells the judge he's going to take the case. And so sort of like, raises his hand to go and do this thing. Then and then going to the jail and putting himself in harm's way, putting himself in between the mob and this man. And then at the courthouse, an all-out defense for him. But that jailhouse scene, as much as anything else, really does, I think, just so well encapsulate what Atticus is doing in this movie. And like you said, highlights his character. Just like taking the lamp down there. That's a good touch. I mean, just a great thing. I mean, he's not planning to shoot his way out, protect people, with killing other people. And then he's fortunate to have Scout and Jim, who, you know, in that scenario, without them, I mean, it goes the other way probably. So, yeah.
You know, a little detail that is so insignificant, it's probably 1% of what makes that scene, but that I can't really let go of is the fact that that lamp was plugged in through the bars of the courthouse and somewhere on the inside of the building. You can see the cord running. Okay,
I didn't notice where it was plugged in.
Yeah, and
that's all. Yeah,
I don't know if that's an intentional commentary or not, but I'm assuming that even in a small town where you work in the courthouse on a regular basis, that he doesn't have the keys to the courthouse. Maybe he does. I'm assuming he doesn't. That means that someone on the inside, presumably a sheriff's deputy, had to plug that in for him, and then they went home. Or then they stayed inside, where it's like in other words, it should have been them on the outside sitting guard, sitting watch.
That's a really good point. And, you know, I think I made a note of it too. Like, relatively speaking, the sheriff in this movie seems like a pretty good dude. Like, I mean, he's tipping Atticus off when there's going to be trouble. He's taking care of this, you know, defendant most of the time. But at the end of the day, down at that courthouse, that jail, he's not sitting out there guarding that cell. You're right. I mean, he's gone. And we'll talk about the sheriff a little more later when we get to the end. But I still think it's true, relatively speaking. He's like, and relative to some of the other like law enforcement sheriff's people we've had on other movies that we've reviewed, like he's a pretty good, like he's trying to mostly do what's right, but like he wasn't willing to take that step that Atticus was. Absolutely. Absolutely not. All right. So best scene. I also had, I mean, the closing argument's powerful. I think, and I think I read in the novel, it's a little bit longer and more extended, although what is in the movie is word for word from the novel in the closing argument. And we've already talked about it before, but I really like the scene with Atticus talking with Scout about why he took the case, and just that moment of parenting, and you know, trying to explain to her. I mean, and for her, it's important because she's getting picked on or getting bullied at school because of her dad and what he's doing, and which, I mean, you know, those of us with kids, and we're going to have situations like that with our kids, and dealing with troubles at school, and just thinking about just the parenting stuff about it. But like, just also, how he's also got to be in a mode of protecting her, too. And, at the same time, knowing that ultimately, he's got to do what he can to protect Tom also. And, I really like that. Something I didn't mention before, I couldn't remember where it fell in my awards or outline, but, I really like the little negotiating that he does with her on the going back to school deal. I think it's in that same conversation. Because somehow the teachers were giving her a hard time about how he was reading with her at home, like not the right way, or that's kind of the impression I got or whatever. And, and so they make a deal. You go back to school and we'll keep reading the way we read.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. All right. Best line, Yellow Highlighter Award. Mine is just simply, I'll take the case.
Yeah.
I just love it. I just love, I'll take the case. It's just definitive. It's no waffling. It's pretty quick after the question's asked, and it's just, I'll take the case. And I just like it. I like it. I mean, in my head, it's like in a sports movie where it's like, give me the ball.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing. And I just kind of like, I like that.
It's good. It's good. I liked in the closing arguments, Atticus says, I think he actually says it twice, in the name of God, do your duty.
Now, I am confident that you gentlemen will review without passion, the evidence that you have heard, come to a decision and restore this man to his family. In the name of God, do your duty.
Yeah.
And it's just a simple line. I think probably when this was released in 62, that was a banger line. That was probably just very compelling, persuasive. But I think in the larger theme of what this movie is about, for reasons that I want to talk about when we're in closing arguments, I think that line is so significant.
Yeah. Yeah. Some other, just a couple other fun ones. I like when Jim says, I can't go in there without my pants.
Yeah.
That was funny. Atticus tells Jim about Yule, don't worry about him or don't be afraid of him. He's all bluff. Which I think was so descriptive of Yule's character, which is just cowardice. It's what I kept seeing over and over and over again. In every scene that he's doing stuff, it's all from a place of fear and cowardice. And I feel like there was another. I said that one earlier from Maudie about some men are put on the earth to do hard jobs, and your dad's one of them. I like that one.
That's really good.
But yeah, those are all some good ones. I still like the judge saying you're left-handed, Mr. Yule. All right, the Fletcher Reed Award, contempt of court. Mayella gets a little unhinged at the end of her little time on the stand. I kind of had that.
Yeah.
Noted.
Which, I mean, this is maybe just shows how different people are cast, but it was hard for me to understand that Mayella was a minor because the actress looked like she was 40 playing the role of, I think it was supposed to be a teenager.
Yeah, like an older teenager and who's the daughter, but the mom's gone. And so she's kind of the pseudo mom of the little kids. And also, I think in the novel, there's more to this where it's incestuous as well between the dad and that daughter, which they talk about that at the time that this movie was made, that was a little bit too far to include that subject and that material in the movie. I mean, you can kind of get that feel. It's not surprising, I think, when you hear that, but yeah, it was kind of weird. And I remember thinking that same thing too. Like, is she his just young wife or is it the daughter? Yeah, absolutely. This is where I was going to hit the prosecutor again. So his nonchalance in the courtroom was hysterical. I don't even notice this. When he's sitting at counsel table, he's got his leg up over the armrest of the chair, like sitting back. I mean, the next step is to put your foot up on the table and kick back. And I mean, and then he's walking around like chewing that pen, like he's kind of chewing on a cigar kind of thing. He just, it's this arrogance and confidence that he knows he's going to win. He doesn't have to do anything. And it's good old boy. Like, no one's going to call me on this. I probably am going to go play, whatever cards or golf with the judge after this. And, it's just, that's kind of the feel I got from the prosecutor.
Yeah.
But that nonchalant stuff, there's like the leg over the chair, man, that was killing me. Contempt of court, but he wasn't going to get cited for contempt in this trial. That's for sure.
No.
All right. Inadmissible evidence.
All right. So I don't know if this is completely inadmissible, but do you want to do an over under count on the N word being used in this movie?
Okay. So
Because I counted it. I can tell you what the number is. Let me say this.
So are you going to give me a number and then I'm going to say over or under? Okay.
Yeah. So do you think it's over or under 4 times that the N-word was used? Should have said like over or under 10. Because it feels like it's 30.
Well, when you just don't hear it in movies anymore, and then you even hear it once, it's shocking. And so, but you definitely hear it multiple times. But I'm still going to say under 4.
It was 5 times.
5. Okay. So in my head, when I said that, I was thinking 3. So, okay, I missed 2. Man.
So two of those were from kids. So once was Scout saying, is this true about us?
Yep.
I can't remember if Jim said it or if it was, I think it was Jim that said it one time.
Okay. So that's one I'm missing.
Well, and I could be wrong about it, but there was 2 of them were for kids, and it might have just,
Scout, I remember for sure the one. Yeah.
Yeah. And it might have been that she was repeating what was said to her twice, or that we actually heard the kid she was fighting say it once. The other 3 times are from Yule.
Yule, I remember 2 for sure. I was trying to think of a third one. Yeah. Okay.
There's one in the courtroom when the grand jury had just indicted him. Yep. There was one when he was at the Robinson's house and he said lover, in lover. And I cannot remember the third one. I think he said it twice at the courthouse in that first time. I think he might have said something about, it would have been easier to take care of him myself. And then the other one was, you don't believe that the word of that guy above ours. I think it might have been back to back. Might have doubled up on it. I tell you what, that actor was very comfortable throwing that. I mean, listen, you want to talk about feet? He had his feet up on the table every time he dropped that hard R, every time, and it just rolled off his lips. I mean, it was fantastic. I was in awe of how easily he said it.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Wow. Sure, he's just an outstanding actor who just practiced that diction.
That's right. He had a coach.
Took a lot of rehearsal. Rehearsal, the whole thing. I'm gonna extend some benefit of the doubt on that. But I hear you. It was well done, well acted. Yeah. No, that's definitely inadmissible. We're not admitting any of that.
Insert Blazing Saddles. Hey everybody, the sheriff's a bang.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No. Man. All right. Just a few things that I hadn't covered yet on some just notes and things here. Some of the differences between the novel and the movie. It takes place, the movie, over 2 years, where in the novel there's 3, and you get a little bit more extended treatment of the kids in school and the teacher relationships and things like that. But like you mentioned, Mrs. DeBose, I think there's some more of her in the novel as well. But I mentioned a few of these other things about on the stand, Brock Peters crying, and that was not ad-lib's not the right word, but that was not rehearsed. Mm-hmm. Others that were potential actors to play Atticus Finch. Rock Hudson lobbied for it, didn't get it. Spencer Tracy was the first choice to play, but he had conflicts. And then Jimmy Stewart was also asked to play. He was the second choice, but turned it down because the script was too liberal and was going to be controversial. So passed on it, and it wound up being Gregory Peck. In the novel, and I suppose in the movie too, Bob Ewell's full name is Robert E. Lee Ewell. No. Because of course.
Perfect.
Because of course.
Yeah.
I think that's all all that
Nathan
I had.
Bedford Forrest Ewell.
That's right. Right. Exactly. All right. Closing arguments.
Yes. I keep coming back to this, and I don't know that the movie fully answers it. And maybe that's intentional. Maybe it's inviting us to contemplate the answer to this question. But the question is, why did Atticus take the case? Because he did so in the face of so much scorn, so much societal pressure to do the opposite, so much ridicule. He's got to live in this town when it's all said and done. But we know that a motivation, at least one that he primarily articulates, is that his children are watching, and that there's this sense of doing the right thing. And the fact that the children are such a central component of this really invites us to ask, where do we lose our innocence? And I mean that not just us as adults and what age that happened or what circumstances that happened, but as a society, where did we lose our innocence? And this concept of this movie was so well received in 1962, but yet here we are, 2021, and we haven't learned the lessons that the book or the movie want to teach us. And it wasn't because Atticus wasn't capable of being the person that he was expected to be. It wasn't that he wasn't a typical manly man. He was apparently the best shot in the county, according to his friend. He's more than capable of killing this dog from a distance. Yeah. But he has this honor code of, there's just certain things that are sacred. And you don't kill a mockingbird because it's innocent. And you don't take a man to trial when he didn't do it. And I'm going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And even I think the commentary that was subtle, where you have Scout coming home and talking about how they learned about the Egyptians and we wouldn't be anywhere without them as a society. Mm-hmm. They were the cradle of civilization. Is this all ultimately appealing to the fact that there is something beautiful and dignified about the Imago Dei, about how we are created in God's image. And when we're talking as a white Western society, the black people didn't do anything to us. And, in the name of God, do your duty. That line in the closing, just this idea, first, do no harm. Don't kill the mockingjay, the mockingbird. Listen, I've been watching Hunger Games this last week because my oldest son is
don't
reading
kill the
him.
mockingjay either.
Yeah,
but
don't do that. Listen, although they'll mess you up.
Yeah, don't do that.
But don't kill the mockingbird. And I'm sure you'll edit that out. Wink. No
way, man. That's good.
So yeah, I can't get beyond this concept of where did we go wrong? And even in the closing argument, that statement, it feels like it meant more to society in 1962 than it does today. For a lawyer to stand up at that point in time and say, in the name of God, do your duty. That doesn't feel like it would be a persuasive argument in a courtroom setting or even in fiction today. Because everything is, just so, matured and relativistic and nuanced and gray. And we've lost sense of the right and wrong and the black and the white. And so that is my closing argument. Yeah.
It's good. What do we make of, at the very end, Atticus going along with the sheriff's plan to not go through the proper channels of justice as it relates to Ewell's death? Mm-hmm. How do we feel about that?
That's a great point too, because one of the other, symbols of innocence that is constantly brought up in this book is Boo Radley. He's the one that was ostracized and society looked down upon and thought ill of. And ultimately, you know, there's nothing like there's nothing wrong with him in terms of, I guess he has equal dignity, and there's no reason that he shouldn't be treated humanely as well. And we shouldn't think any less of him as well. And so he goes out of his way to do something good, to save Jim.
Yeah.
And so in that context, doing the right thing isn't about the rule book of justice, because the sheriff has seen Atticus fight and lose a clear case, or what feels like a clear case of right and wrong. And there's this understanding that once you're in the system, it's up to institutions and people beyond you. There's conversation about, it looks like a clear case of self-defense. We don't even have to go there. An arrest doesn't have to be made, because the backstory that I'm going with is that Ewell had an accident and fell on his own knife. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, there's an injustice to even putting Boo in the system, inserting him into the machinery, knowing that you're not completely in control of the outcome. And so in that context, the right thing is to keep him out of the system, to do no harm. And so I really think that that's a sweet gesture.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I feel like, and I kind of see it on Atticus's face at the end, kind of wrestling with, as a lawyer, as an officer of the court. Like, I know that this is on one level wrong. And you know, he's not a sheriff. He's not law enforcement. He's not any obligation to do anything at that point. But, yeah, it's, but you could see it. Wrestling with right and wrong, within that situation. You know, cause up until now he's been sort of a by the book, like, let's do everything by the book for Tom. And so, you know, so then to kind of not go by the book with Boo, what are we saying, you know? And so you can see that internal strife that he's going through. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I think I can't say it better than you. I mean, this is just a really still timely and relevant, unfortunately, story. And you know, it was on the one hand very hard to watch and to kind of think through and process, and on the other, it was so well done and well acted. Like, I could appreciate all of the work involved in doing it at the same time, and from that standpoint, it was a pleasure to watch. You know, in terms of as a movie. All right, gavels.
So I'm trying to pull them up now.
Yeah,
it looks like up until this point, we've had Hamilton was our highest scoring on average. If we average
on average,
out. Yep. Few Good Men is under that at 96.5. Next down is Primal Fear, 94.5. My Cousin Vinny, 94. Witness for the Prosecution, 89. Runaway Jury, 88.3. Legally Blonde, 88. Liar Liar, 86. The Lincoln Lawyer, 84. And Marshall, 81. Marshall, that just seems like so long ago. I can't even remember what that's about. That's crazy. Was that the basketball team? I don't know. Yeah, so you're waiting on me, aren't you? That long stare
fine.
that you're giving me.
I'm good. I've got it.
Awkward pause that you're giving me.
Which we'll edit out.
Wink.
No, so I've been thinking about this. So I kind of this is absolutely a movie that's in my top tier. We talked about kind of the tiering of these last time we did this, which for me, I've got Hamilton and A Few Good Men, both sitting at 95. I am putting this one notch below those two. So 94 for me on this one, which is Hamilton, A Few Good Men, 95. This one, 94.
Wow.
So that's where I come down. Tell
me why that is. Can you talk that out loud?
So I think that a couple of things. One is that why I put A Few Good Men where I do and then put this one against it is it's just so much more of a lawyer movie, a legal movie, I guess. And so we talked about that earlier with this one, that this really is a much deeper and more complex story about these characters and life at that time than it is a legal movie or a lawyer movie. And so that's one. And then the other, Hamilton, it just brings me so much enjoyment to watch and listen to Hamilton that I can't really imagine putting anything above it. So it's more a factor of slotting it just a tad notch below. I could probably put it at 95 and not feel bad about it, but I'm going to keep it at 94. Okay.
I'm going to put it at, I'm going to say 84. And this
84.
84. And this is why. It's not because there's anything quote unquote wrong with the movie.
Yeah.
I think it's the subject matter for me, just in terms of watchability, especially as a criminal defense lawyer. It's just hard to watch. It's traumatizing. I think that this is probably the blueprint for all of your subsequent movies that are like, A Time to Kill or The Green Mile. I think that this is the originator of that sort of, the struggle of, even in the Lincoln Lawyer to some extent, just the struggle of like, this person's really innocent and there's, this accusation and it involves, there's a interracial, relationship or interracial tension or confrontation that's involved in it. And, it's the system, where a black person can usually never count on justice. And you've got the white advocate standing in the middle, torn between two worlds. Like that blueprint, we see it a lot later. Mm-hmm. This is probably the first place that you see it. Mm-hmm. And for what it was at the time, maybe I would rank it a lot higher if this was the first time that we're seeing that movie. In society, that plot line.
Yeah. It feels more like a overdone trope now almost.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, even the way that it does, the way that it ends with the hard reality of he is found guilty. And so we did kill a mockingbird. And then I guess we've got an opportunity to rescue another one at the end with Boo. But the way that the courtroom situation ends with the black community standing on its feet in respect for Atticus is almost worth the watch of the movie itself. That's just such a beautiful moment, and it speaks such volumes. Being an advocate for the community, having done all that you could do to stand. But, goodness willing, this is probably the last time I'm going to watch this in the next 10 years.
Yeah. No, it's not easy. It's not something you want to watch over and over. That's for sure. That's absolutely true. So, I hope that, folks listening, if, you haven't seen it in a while or have never seen it,
just
I think
get some popcorn, glass of wine, Friday night. It's a good hang.
It's absolutely, I think, worth doing once, and leave it to your judgment as to whether you do it twice. But do it once. Certainly, objectively, as a movie, an all-time classic, but at the same time, a very difficult movie and obviously novel as well. But we appreciate everyone hanging in and going through it with us. Hope you enjoyed it. Robert, thanks as always.
Thank you.
Good to see you. And we will do a lighter movie the next time out. But thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.